All right, awesome. So we are now recording. It is Monday, January 7th, 2019. And I'm super excited to have Chandler Walker here today with us on the Ketogenic Living Coach Certification call. And Chandler and I were actually introduced because we're in a Fitness Accelerator Mastermind group together. And I've interviewed Chandler for my podcast. And one of the things that we were chatting about that came up on our podcast was the importance of cholesterol for bodily functions, specifically, your brain, and just how important cholesterol actually is to your life and to your vitality. So I had to bring him on here. I was like, oh my God, can I please have you talk to our coaches group? Because we get questions on cholesterol all the time, not just from our current clients or prospective clients, but like some of those people that are on the internet that's like, don't go keto. It's you're going to die of a heart attack. So I'm super excited that we have Chandler on today. He's a biochemist. He specializes in helping treat people with chronic pain and inflammation. And we are going to focus today on talking all about cholesterol, what it is, the importance of it, HDL, LDL, particle size. We're going to run through it, and then we're going to have time to answer your questions, which I know you guys have several. So if you're watching this on the replay, I will also try and post some of the questions that come up in the chat. All right, Chandler, I'm just going to turn it all over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Like I was telling Kate earlier, it's not that I'm good at this stuff. I'm just too dumb to stop learning. So we continuously get better. We continuously grow. And somehow when we start talking, we black out. We wake up 3 days later with a cheeseburger wrapper on our face and a liter of cola next to us. We don't know what happened, but we gave some good info. So we came here to talk about cholesterol. And when we look at cholesterol, it's a highly contentious issue with people, especially in current literature and the modern world we live in. We've been taught since anyone can remember, probably before my time, that cholesterol is bad and that we learn to and it's killing. What's 18 research, 14 research and literature are starting to change a lot to identify the fact that dietary intake of cholesterol is not the problem that we thought it was. And we're starting to learn and understand that the problem stems from what we call a root cause approach. So it's not the cholesterol that's causing the issues. It's the standard American diet or the way we've been eating for a long period of time, the way we've been sedentary, that's causing us to have the problems associated with inflammation that create the issues that cholesterol has to repair. So all we're doing by reducing cholesterol in any way, in any shape or form, is putting a Band-Aid on an overlying problem. And then when you look at the issues we've created as a result, you can argue that mental health is a problem created as a result of a reduction of cholesterol. You can argue that a lot of these other issues inside of our arteries in terms of plaque and stuff like that are created as a result of eating pro-inflammatory foods and all those things. And so when we look at cholesterol, the reason, and everybody generally just says, oh, well, they say don't eat cholesterol because it's bad. And who's they? Oh, I read it on the internet. Oh, Dr. Google. Okay, cool. So that's right. That's correct. We'll just stop talking now. But the reason that we see that dietary intake isn't a problem in cholesterol is because we have a pathway that's called the mevalonic pathway of cholesterol biosynthesis. And what we found is there's a key regulating enzyme in there called HMG-CoA reductase. And when you look at HMG-CoA reductase, it's basically when you take a statin to lower your cholesterol, it tricks HMG-CoA reductase to just eliminating and excreting it. So it's a key enzyme in regulating your cholesterol biosynthesis in your body. And the reason it's important is because when you consume cholesterol, HMG-CoA reductase looks at it and says, okay, I've already produced enough today inside the body, so we don't need what you've consumed. So it excretes it and gets rid of it. Now, if you didn't somehow magically produce enough cholesterol in your body, when you intake it through diet, then it would actually say, okay, cool, we don't have enough, let's utilize it. And then there's another big problem that we see here with cholesterol as well, is we have two areas that we consume arguably in the body of cholesterol. There's in the actual body, and then there's in the brain. So your brain uses 25% of the cholesterol in your entire body. And so if your brain doesn't have enough cholesterol and your brain cannot function, you will die without enough cholesterol in your brain. And so what we're looking at now is we're saying, okay, if we don't have enough cholesterol in our brain and our brain cannot repair itself because it doesn't have the cholesterol required to maintain the neuroplasticity of the brain, this might be and this is something that a lot of people are arguing, this might be the problem in the incidents that we're seeing with increased rates of dementia and increased rates of Alzheimer's and increased rates of these cloudy brain syndrome that we're starting to see. And it's becoming a huge problem. If you look at the next 10 years, our rates of Alzheimer's and dementia are going to double. And 10 years after that, we're going to see an epidemic and a really big problem in the future if we don't understand and learn what's causing it. Any questions so far? Usually if I talk too long, everybody's like, I've had questions for 3 hours and this guy won't shut up.
No, that's awesome. And what Chandler and I was talking about a little bit about this, like right before we started recording. So my family, my in-laws are, they've been told by doctors, oh, your cholesterol is high. Your cholesterol is high, right? And so they have given them, medication. One of them told my husband that even if he ate a diet of like white fish every single day, he would still have to take cholesterol medication. He doesn't take it anymore. We regulate his diet, and he's a pretty active guy. And my mother-in-law has had issues with mental fogginess, but she's been on cholesterol medication for like 30 years. And now she hasn't been taking it as much anymore. And I asked her when I saw her over the holidays to make sure that she was like kind of listening to her body and maybe even like tracking by journal or something when she does take the medication, if she's feeling mentally foggy. So, and this all came up from this exact conversation with Chandler and how cholesterol is essential for our brain health. What I would love to know is when we are told that, our cholesterol is high, what is truly high cholesterol? Like what is what is dangerous?
So I don't necessarily consider cholesterol dangerous unless we have an issue with familial hypocholesterolemia. Try to say that 3 times fast. FH, we just call it for short, so we don't have to pronounce it. Or if we have type 2 diabetes, or if we're already suffering from some sort of autoimmune issue. Those are the big issues that are going to cause a dysfunction in your body and cause issues to be associated with high cholesterol. Now, if we don't have those issues and we look at our cholesterol and it's high, we're looking at is, and this is a problem that we're seeing in medicine today, is we look at a Band-Aid approach. So how do we fix what's wrong right now? But what we need to look at it from the viewpoint of us is, okay, what's the root cause that's an issue with this? Why is this becoming a problem, and what created this high cholesterol problem? Because if we mask the cholesterol, we're going to be on medication forever, but we're never going to fix a problem. And so if we want to fix a problem, we have to look at number one, okay, do we have some sort of metabolic problem? Does this person have pre-diabetes? Do they have MS? Do they have thyroid's a really big issue. If someone comes in with high cholesterol, you need to look at their thyroid. It's generally one of the really big indicators that we can work with and create and fix to eliminate the problem. The next thing I look at is, okay, so none of those are an issue. Okay, what's going on in your gut? So we need to look at your gut bacteria. Do we have a long-standing infection? Do we have a dysbiosis going on in there? Do we have some sort of ulcer that's building that we didn't know about? And those are the big things. And then the last thing I would look at if we still can't fix it is say, okay, you have this high cholesterol problem. We've looked at all these root cause approaches. We don't want to be on medication forever. And I never tell people to get off their medication if they're on it. They gradually work with their doctor to reduce the amount they're taking as it gets better, as we treat the root cause approach. And then the final thing we look at is we say, okay, now we've looked at all these things. I want to talk to you about your family and your history. So how many people in your family before you have had high cholesterol or have had problems with heart disease, or have had an inflammatory infection, or what we would label as an autoimmune disease, which is basically anything that we don't understand? And so they'll tell me, okay, so my grandma had it, my grandfather had it, my mother had it, and okay, cool. So now we have an epigenetic problem across the board. And genetics basically at the fundamental level is if your parents had it, or if your parents' parents had it, they're going to pass on the gene that expresses it to be communicated, to be activated with you. So now you're automatically in a position to where you're going to be more likely to have these issues. So then we need to say, okay, now let's look at this root cause approach. How do we fix the problem? How do we get over this high cholesterol level without looking at the cholesterol as the demon and looking at, okay, what's going on with our bodies and our life that's creating the problem? And it usually stems from, okay, we need to reduce our intake of omega-6 fatty acids because they're pro-inflammatory at the high level. We're usually at like a 300-to-1 ratio, and the reason keto works so well is because that 300-to-1 ratio goes down and omega-3 goes up. I mean, if you eat a whole avocado a day and a fat bomb, boom, omega-3 is good, omega-6 goes down. Now we've lowered the pro-inflammatory aspects of our body and raised the anti-inflammatory aspects of our body. The next thing I look at is, okay, now we need to heal your gut. So we need to introduce common and normal gut bacteria. And when we look at this, there's certain brands that you want to be careful with probiotics, because when I was in microbiology, what would happen is we would plate a bunch of companies different probiotics, and it would just be random stuff. And we found E. coli in some of these guys' things. So you have to get the strands that are documented strains. And the way you understand and learn what a documented strain is, it'll say the bacterial name, and then behind it, it'll say BS 301 or something. It always has a number behind it, which means they trademark that strain and they continuously use it. No one else can use it. So at least you have something that's going to be consistent. So in addition to those, we take prebiotics, and arguably prebiotics, especially if you find a mental health disorder, prebiotics are going to reduce the effects and the problems associated with the medication people are taking typically, because you're enhancing and helping the trillions of bacteria that live in our gut. Usually for that kind of stuff, I'll take like Jarrow plus FOS or a Jarrow prebiotic mix. It tends to work pretty well. They're a really good brand. And so those are the two big things that we kind of look at the beginning, and that help us in approaching and fixing and treating these problematic issues associated with cholesterol that aren't really associated with cholesterol. They're associated with diet and exercise. And then the last thing we look at is, okay, now how stressed are you? Are your cortisol levels off the chart? Do we need to look at some stress reduction techniques, some mindful techniques? The ability of someone to focus and reduce their stress is huge. It'll reduce the cholesterol quicker than any sort of medication. And then the final thing is sleep. Okay, how often are you sleeping? And now it doesn't need to be, oh, you need to sleep 8 hours a night. The idea of sleeping a certain amount of time is a myth. It's not. It makes people neurotic, and it makes them go crazy that they need to sleep this much time. And arguably, when we see sleep disorders, the problem is going to bed too early. So the people who go to bed too early don't sleep well. They lay in bed all day or all night, and then they don't get any sleep. And so we need to look at that and say, okay, here's what I want you to do. Your bed is reserved specifically for sleep, and that's it. So when you're ready to go to bed, you're going to go there. And if you're going to sleep 6 hours, okay, go to bed at 1 a.m, wake up at 8 a.m. At least you got your sleep in there. And so that's the final thing we need to dial in when we're looking at these problems associated with cholesterol. And when we look at the root cause approach, so what is the cause? Okay, the cause is reducing, fixing, and making sure we get over metabolic dysfunction, healing the gut, which is also associated with metabolic dysfunction. And then it goes into, okay, now I need to reduce stress and fix my sleep. And these are the big things that make this work. And the reason things like keto work so well is because it's essentially, at the fundamental level, it's an anti-inflammatory diet. And the way we eat in keto often, as long as you're not eating like keto pancakes and stuff like that, the way we eat in keto typically in a good diet puts us in a position of being able to reduce the inflammation in our body. If you're eating fats from like coconut, it's one of the healthiest saturated fats you can actually consume. And when you look at the breakdown of saturated fats, you've got stearic acid, which is really important and really healthy for you, that's found in coconuts and a lot of these saturated fats. And so I could just keep going down this rabbit hole, but there's so many different things. And when you look at the world from a biochemical perspective, it's not so black and white, and it's not so religious. And when I say religious, I mean, when we start talking about I'm vegan. And so there's this joke, a vegan and a CrossFitter walk into a bar, what happens? Everybody leaves. They won't stop talking about it. And it's the idea that we get this fanaticism around it. And that's not what it looks like. It's not black and white. It's really what's going on with this person. What's the issue? What's the underlying cause that I think is going on? And how do we fix that? And how do we become a detective? Like, if you guys remember the show Dr. House, sometimes I tell people we're like the Dr. House of health and wellness. You come in and tell us there's 43 things different wrong with you, and you lost a leg, and we have to figure out how to regain that leg, regrow it back, and make you smile again.
Yeah. This actually goes, because I want to talk to you about the relationship of like the whole picture of cholesterol, the HDL, LDL, the particle sizes, the LDL particle sizes, and triglycerides. So we actually got a question from one of our attendees, Jean Marie, one of our coaches. This is a personal question from her. My cholesterol went up 20 points on keto. Triglycerides went down. LDL went up. So triglycerides 48, HDL 69, LDL 123. So, you know, when she saw those numbers, she was like, oh my God, like my cholesterol's high and it went up. And I asked about the and Jean Marie knows this. I asked about the particle size, but you know that's just not a test that doctors will willingly run. And her A1C went down significantly.
How long has she been on the keto diet?
JM, 6 months. 3 months. 3 months, and her A1C went from 5.8 to 5.1.
Yeah. So looking at those markers, it looks like her rate of inflammation or her inflammation markers are going down, which is a really good thing. And it's putting us in a good place. And arguably HDL and LDL, both like small, dense and large puffy or fluffy particles, it's a really contentious issue. So you can look at HDL and say, okay, that's a good marker of cholesterol. And then you can say, okay, LDL, that's a marker of bad cholesterol. But then when you dig deeper, you look at it and you say, okay, LDL could actually contribute to the fact that we have mental disorders and the fact that we have dementia and these associated with these cloudy brain disorders. Because when we take statins and when we take medication to reduce that cholesterol, what does it do? Well, it tells HMG-CoA reductase to block it, and then we cannot utilize it anymore. We don't have it, or we don't have as much. And without it, you'll die. But what you can argue here is you can say, okay, my LDL has been lowered, but now I have cloudy brain syndrome, and now I'm getting symptoms that I didn't know I was going to have. And then 20 years from now, oh, oops, I'm starting to get in early onset dementia, early onset Alzheimer's and stuff like that, or I can't remember things and I just don't understand why. And it usually stems, and this might be me just throwing stuff into the fan right now, but you could argue this, and this is becoming more and more popular. In the next 10 years, we'll probably actually understand it. But this is the reason we look at LDL and say, okay, it's not just bad. And if your doctor won't run the workup that shows you what the different particle size is, you need to ask them for a full blood workup. This is what I want. Or there's a million different places that'll do your blood right there. I think a full blood workup is probably going to cost you maybe $150, something like that. But at least you're going to get everything. And then you can take it to someone like Kate or like me and say, hey, check this out, people. What do you think? And then you can make a really deep dive into it. And then in addition to that, if you're worried about this, what I would do is, if you're not doing this, I would write a food log out. So what am I eating? What does my diet look like? How does my stress look? How does my sleep look? And then often we can start to poke into metabolic syndrome and issues that you didn't know you had just by looking at what's going on in your diet and what's going on in your blood, and then see how that's working in conjunction.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I definitely want to talk to you about the relationship with like triglycerides, because this was something that, my dad and I kind of talk about a lot, because he's someone too that like, years ago they were like, oh, you have high cholesterol. I'm like, well, what are your triglycerides like? And at the time he was eating like Pop-Tarts for breakfast every single day, like legit brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts. You have no idea how hard it was to get this man off of Pop-Tarts. And he did. Thank the Lord. But like during that time, his triglycerides were really high. He had a lot of sugar, a lot of processed sugar in his diet. And so this is something too that I recommend clients look at too, when we're looking at cholesterol. I'm like, well, let's also look at your triglycerides. Could you talk about that relationship a little bit?
Yeah, when we look at, and funny story, when you eat a lot of fructose, they turn into triglycerides in the liver, and then magically you have high triglycerides. So that's what I would look at first. So, hey, I have a problem with triglycerides. Okay, what does your diet look like? Oh, that's interesting. You're drinking 3 sodas a day. You're eating a bunch of different, even fruits that will turn into triglycerides at some point, but I don't think they're as problematic. In keto, you're probably not doing too much fruit anyway. Personally, I don't eat as much fruit, but so when we look at triglycerides, that's the big issue that I see. So it's not necessarily, oh, I'm eating fat, they're going to turn into triglycerides and I'm going to die. No, I'm eating fat for energy, which is going to be converted into the ATP and the energy I need to actually make my body work. Or, okay, cool, my triglycerides are high. What's your diet look like? Oh, I eat keto waffles for breakfast, and then I eat these refined carbohydrates for lunch. I have some cereal, and then for dinner, I have a plate of spaghetti. And okay, so now I see why we have some triglycerides, because the carbohydrates we're eating, especially the carbohydrates from fructose, are being turned into triglycerides in our liver and raising our triglyceride levels as a result. So that's the big issue that I see associated with triglycerides. It's, okay, you ate that Pop-Tart for breakfast. Cool, there's some fructose in there. Great. Now that's been converted into triglycerides in the liver to be able to use it. Okay, for lunch, what did you have? Oh, I had a Nutri-Grain bar that had some fruit stuff inside of it. Okay, cool. So now we got some more. Your entire day just ends up being fructose and triglycerides. So we have to be really careful. And when you look at the standard American diet, they're drinking sodas, they're eating cereals, they're eating fruits, they're eating Pop-Tarts and candy bars and all of these things. So essentially we're just spending the entire day raising those levels. And then what's interesting is when we switch to like a keto style or a paleo style diet, or even an evolutionary health style diet, we put our body into a state to where we're managing the 3 macronutrients in a different way. And this is what people don't necessarily understand, is your 3 macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats, are going to be used for energy. And whether or not your fats are high or your carbs are high or your protein's high, your body's going to utilize whichever one it has available for that energy. And because of that, it's not going to turn something into it's not going to just sit there and kill you as a triglyceride. It's going to be turned into a usable form of energy so that way you don't die.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh, and I know we talked about this, like when we were just talking about like levels, like what constitutes high cholesterol. In Jimmy Moore's book, Cholesterol Clarity, like what the HDL is up with my numbers, and then in Dr. Zoe Harcomb's blog, they both talk about like high cholesterol and even getting a number back from your healthcare professional after blood work is done. That is, in the 300s, 350s, and I know like some, people are like, oh my God, I'm a ticking time bomb. And these two folks argue that that's not actually high cholesterol. What's your take on that? I know that you said you don't really look at numbers unless we're looking at other conditions, but just wondering how you feel about a statement like that.
Yeah, when I look at cholesterol, I don't look at, okay, this is your overall cholesterol number. It really doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't help us decide how we're going to approach treatment or how we're going to fix the root cause. What we look at, if we were going to look at numbers, would be the lipid markers, so that the number of cholesterol particles, both HDL particles, LDL particles, and then we would look at both the particle size of the different particles that we have. And so those would be much better markers. And then maybe lipoprotein particle numbers, because those three things are going to give us at least a better story as to what's going on. So I know where your HDL is, I know where your LDL is, I know what the sizes look like, and I know the particle numbers of each. Typically physicians, and it's not that they're bad people or anything like this, or that they suck. It's just that they're not in a position to actually get those tests because they're expensive and they're trying to get you in and out. There's a huge administrative bloat, so they have to make sure that they at least get people in and out, and they don't take time to run these expensive tests that are not necessary. But I would say that you can ask, okay, hey, can I get a full workup when I look at, and I want to look at particle size, I want to look at particle number of HDL, particle number of LDL, and my particle number of lipoprotein. So that way I can make an actual informed decision, or I can take this to a functional medical provider or someone who understands these numbers to help me out. And there's a lot of people out there. It's becoming more and more popular to have this integrated approach to medicine. So you can find someone to read those if your doctor won't. And typically a physician, I would say the more modern physician, is capable of reading these things and capable of actually going through this and working with other healthcare providers. And we have this model where we say that it's the responsibility of someone like me to work in conjunction with your doctor to get on the phone, work through these things, and have a dual treatment plan established versus working against each other.
Yeah, totally. That's such great advice. I want to open this up too to questions and to any other questions that you guys have, because I know I've kind of been asking a lot that I'm interested in. But you can go ahead and either unmute yourself, or you can type into the chat so that we can see any questions that you have. Don't be shy, because I know you guys are working with people that that freak out at first. Oh, you know what? So have you seen with people that are, changing their diets to keto, or just at least, lower carbs, higher in healthy fats? God bless you. I saw you sneeze. Like higher healthy fats, or incorporating just more healthy fats into their diet in general. Do you typically see cholesterol numbers raise and then come back down or level out, or what has been your experience?
Most often what we'll see is we'll see the cholesterol numbers essentially go down. I have a lot that have it go up initially and then go right down. And I've had a couple that go up, and then we figure out they have a thyroid problem or a metabolic issue. And so then we treat that and it goes down. And so it's one of those three fronts. And this is why medicine and evolutionary health is so not black and white. It's going to be a different scenario every time, but those are the things that we look at. So, okay, it went down. Cool. Well, you're a normal, healthy person. Okay, it went up. All right, let's look at other inflammatory markers. Let's look at your body. Let's look at your metabolic issues. I had a girl in the past who had a serious thyroid problem, and her levels were like 9 point something. And we had things go up. We had to look at it, and we said, okay, you have a thyroid. Let's work on the root cause to that. Let's work on getting that and putting that in a better position. We got it down. Her medication went from that 9 level way down to less than 1 or 1.
Wow.
And then everything else went down along with it. So that's the big issue we have to look at. If something goes up, there's usually a reason that it went up that's going on, that's an underlying cause behind it. And so that's what I would look at. If someone gets on keto and they say, oh, my cholesterol went up, I'd say, okay, cool. that makes sense. I've seen that before. I totally understand. It's always stroke their ego, validate their concern. And then after that, it's okay, now let's look at some other things that are going on in your life. Is there any way you can bring me some blood work, or do you know if you have a family history of this and this? And then we can start to really dive deep into what's going on in their body and their system.
Yeah, awesome. Could you talk a little bit about A1C as well? I know we just mentioned that Jean Marie's was able to go down pretty significantly by 0.7 points.
Yeah, when we look at A1C, the big thing that I like to look at with it is if it's going down, it means we have inflammatory markers being reduced, which is really important for us. And if I see that going down, then I know, aside from everything else, that at least our rate of inflammation in our body and the systemic problem that we're experiencing is probably being reduced. So then I know what our gut is going to be healed as a result, and I know the potential associated problems with autoimmune are going to be eliminated as a result, or not eliminated, but put into remission as a result. So it's a really big marker in terms of identifying and understanding our ability to manage inflammation.
Awesome. All right, I want to open this up. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything for Chandler?
Yeah, you can ask me anything, and if I don't know, I'll make it up.
Oh, Rachel has one. I have a client who has really high triglycerides and has type 1 diabetes. He has been off plan here and there as he travels for work, but does send food macros in. So really high triglyceride and has type 1 diabetes.
So triglycerides are not decreasing. So what does his diet look like?
Rachel, do you want to unmute yourself? Here, I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, I dialed in, and so I wasn't sure if I had access. So he has, like I can't get him on board with salmon and that kind of thing. He eats a lot of chicken. He does send his macros, and they are, they are within range, but he does have a history of high triglycerides, like in his family. His father actually passed at a young age of a heart attack. So, this is a very high risk situation. And I don't want him to get frustrated and realize that this may not be the plan for him, but he really wants to give it a go because of the diabetes side.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out what my best path is and how to continue to direct him to both bring those triglycerides down as well as his, and his blood sugar actually has been low. So it's the lowest it's been. He's been much better in that realm.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I would look at, especially when I see type 1 diabetes and triglycerides really high, is essentially, initially, I would have him on a sort of autoimmune protocol. So it would be oriented around getting those issues into remission and at least managing the problem, because then it'll put him in a position to be able to understand and know what he's going to react to and what's going to make the most sense. And autoimmune is tricky. I always tell people this is your do it or die plan. I mean, you're in a position to where you're either going to be unhealthy or you're going to have to make this plan work. And so with autoimmune, we tend to eliminate potentially all problematic foods. It's a shotgun approach. And so we say, okay, you can eat, we want to eliminate either the entirety of an egg or just the whites. The whites are the lysozymes where most of the issues are. So you can eat yolks, no nuts, no capsaicin from peppers. We don't eat nightshades, so no tomatoes, eggplants, anything like that. We get rid of a lot of these problematic based foods for at the minimum a period of 30 to 45 days. And then once they start feeling better and these inflammatory markers and these problems start to go down or at least go away, then we add one food back in every week and see if we react to it. So if he adds one food back in, do his high triglycerides start raising, or does he start getting these symptoms associated with diabetes that start really hitting him hard? And then so we can understand and manage basically his food markers and his inflammatory protocol and his autoimmune issues. So how can we manage his body attacking itself?
That's really good advice. And there's actually a lot of good resources out there for AIP like diet plans and which foods to include and which foods not to include. But it is very easy for him to be, on a healthy fat, high fat ketogenic diet and following that AIP protocol.
Yeah. And then I'd say the last thing is just the traveling for work scares me with people with diabetes and these problems because they're going to be stressed out. They're not going to be sleeping. So we're going to have to talk about how do you reduce stress? How do you put your sleep in order? How do you at least get yourself in some sort of normal sleep pathway? And if you travel heavily, if not, it's not a huge issue. But often travel equals lack of sleep and high stress.
I love that you're talking about lack of sleep and high stress because I have been seeing, just again, from being too dumb to stop learning. I research a lot on what's going on with like children now too, and like there's this like influx of, oh, Karen, I'm going to try and mute your audio. Okay. There's this like influx of, children with high cholesterol levels. And if you look at like the amount of like stress that I feel like a lot of kids are under these days with the different requirements for school and like their lack of sleep, it definitely makes sense that those are linked.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It kills me to see kids, especially because kids essentially until they're even 17, 18 years old, they should be getting 12 hours a night of sleep. And these kids are getting 5 or 6. And this is the key era of cognitive development for their brain. So you're building kids who are high stressed, low sleep into adults who are going to be high stress, low sleep. And so you're essentially putting them in a position to where they're never going to be able to maximize the full capabilities of what they're at, where they're capable of. And there's really no way around it with the school system unless you homeschool, because your kids are going to go to school at 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. If you're in, I think it was Seattle, just introduced like a 9 a.m. school day, they saw incredible results. But so you're going to have to put yourself in a position where, okay, my kids are going to be chronically sleep deprived. How do we combat this? Oh, well, they have to go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night when they're never going to do that. And so they're going to get up, and then I'm going to have to, okay, where's a private school we can go to? Does anybody start school at 10 a.m., which is the ideal time that kids should actually be waking up or moving? And so it's interesting that kids are in a unique and high level period of cognitive development, but they're not able to maximize it because as a society, we've decided that getting up early is some sort of marker of success.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like even, and I know we've all talked about this a lot, like establishing a solid morning routine. And Chandler, are you familiar with Lori Kennedy? She came on one time to talk to us about establishing a morning routine, but also explaining that it's not necessarily the morning that this has to happen, but just that you carve out that routine time that you have during the day. When I was with a different, an MLM company, like we would be like, no sleep till elite, like waking up at like 4 a.m. That like killed me. I could not sustain that. I was so miserable during that time.
We get this badge of honor. I wake up at 5 in the morning every day. Oh, well, that's good for you. You look tired and you're pretty inflamed. I'm going to sleep in. I'm not even going to set an alarm clock half the time, and I'm going to wake up and I'm going to go to bed when I'm tired and wake up when I wake up. And sadly, most of the population doesn't have the ability to do that. So like you're saying, set yourself up a morning and even a bedtime routine. So my bed is reserved for sleep. I don't need to be eating in my bed or sitting on my phone or doing any of these other things, because if I do those things, I'm training my body to learn and understand that the bed is for more than sleep. So if I leave one thing I started doing with people was you have an electronics locker after your bedtime. So you put I have an office in my house. So electronics go in the office, and then you go into your room and you go to bed. And it puts you in a position where, what am I going to do? I can't get on my phone. I can't watch TV. My Wi-Fi's off. My life is over. I'm done. And then you just pass out and you wake up and you have a great night of sleep. But it really works. And this lack of control that you have over your devices kills people at first, but eventually, and after a while, they actually feel really good about it.
No, and I'm honestly, I'm so bad about that. But we do really need to reduce EMF. Like that's definitely something that's like messing us all up for sure. Jean Marie had another question. Does Jarrow, the prebiotic that you'd recommended, do they have non-chewable prebiotics? And do you have an exact product that you recommend?
I like to use, it's called Jarrow plus FOS. So fructooligosaccharides. It's a super long word, but it's your probiotic. I usually look for at the minimum 3 billion colony forming units in the bottle. I like 10 billion a lot better, but it tends to be a lot more expensive for people. So we settle with 3 billion. And then you have the FOS, which is your prebiotic fiber that's going to feed them as they go through and feed the inhabitants inside your gut, which is arguably more important than the probiotics themselves. That's
good advice. That's really good advice. And I know Jarrow you can buy at Whole Foods. It's refrigerated.
Yeah, they have it Whole Foods, Sprouts, Trader Joe's, I think, Amazon. So it's all over the place.
Is that one that needs to be refrigerated?
I tend to refrigerate it. It scares me to leave bacteria out in the open because they're living organisms and they'll die. So Jarno, they did release a new pill that's actually designed to save them and keep them healthy without being refrigerated. It's a new capsule. I just saw it, so I don't have an exact recommendation on it, but I do refrigerate my pro and prebiotics and try not to get them exposed to heat because nobody wants to eat a bunch of dead bacteria.
Yeah, that's gross. That sounds gross.
Yeah, it's funny. If you open the pills and you dump it in water, the bacteria, they go and they clump together. So it creates just like white clumps. It's pretty neat.
That's how you know that they're living?
Yeah, because then they're going to form together and kind of clump into one little unit. It's pretty interesting. It looks, I mean, for the lack of a better term, it's like a little booger sitting in there. So nobody wants to drink it. So you keep it in the pills when you eat it.
That's what the molecular hydrogen that I use and I dump in my water ends up looking like, because it's a little bit gray.
Yeah, and then you can feel it when you're swallowing it. Okay, this isn't a good experience, so keep it in the pills.
Yeah. Good to know. Any other questions for Chandler, my brilliant, brilliant friend that I'm so grateful for?
Yeah, you can ask me anything, even if it's a random person you're working with, and we can work through it. That's the fun part, is working through problems live with people.
The groups of people that do have like familial FH, familial hypercholesterolemia, in my experience, I've only had one of them. And she didn't know it at the time, I guess, but I guess she found out a little bit later, but I recommended that she work, with her doctor and not work with me doing keto anymore. For somebody that does have FH, like what is something, I'm assuming that keto probably isn't the best lifestyle for them to follow.
Yeah, FH is really tough because that enzyme that regulates your cholesterol levels, the key component, HMG-CoA reductase, isn't working. So they need to be on something that's going to regulate and manage those levels. It's dangerous for them to not be on it. So it's one of the few incidences where they need to be on medication with their doctor. We can also put them on an autoimmune protocol that can show some progress and results and help. But it's also a position that needs to be managed to make sure that enzyme is capable of actually functioning. And that's the only time and the only issue where we have to actually get on some sort of medication to manage it, because you'll die otherwise and you'll produce too much and you'll fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, I love so much of this conversation because what you're talking about is positive lifestyle changes, sleep, movement, reduction of stress, and focusing on good whole sources of foods, good healthy fats, the healthy omega-3s, a good balance. And these are all things that we teach our clients, right? When we are teaching them how to safely and effectively adopt a ketogenic lifestyle, and we look at their life, like what it looks like as a whole, and giving them advice on how to reduce stress and why fitness is so important, not just for weight loss, but for that whole body health. I love conversations like these because you just prove that what we're doing is like the right thing. So I really appreciate that. It's nice to be told you're right.
That's true. It's neat to know that things work. And I always tell people, I'm like, okay, so the standard American is not healthy. They're stressed. They're dying, they're falling apart, they're not in a place they want to be. So switching to keto is amazing. Switching to anything's amazing, but switching to something that's more sustainable is even better. So if you switch to a keto style diet and you have it in a sustainable format, you're going to win. If you switch to a vegan diet and it's sustainable, great. If you switch to anything and it doesn't maintain, you can't maintain it, or you're not stable, or you can't sustain it, that's when you run into problems and issues. So maybe don't jump into the meatitarian diet, because I don't know if that's sustainable, but you want to make sure that you jump into something you can do long-term, and you can sustain keto. You can say, okay, at the beginning, I'm going to do 30 grams of carbohydrates a day or less. That's my keto protocol. Then once I hit the inflammatory markers I want, I'm in a good position and I'm in a good place. I'm going to move it up. Okay, now maybe I can do 50, and 50 or less is going to keep me manageable and sustained, and I'm going to be okay. So that's how we can make it actually usable long-term. And that's how we can put ourselves in a position to where we don't get on that roller coaster of success and failure.
Exactly. Macros are not static. Our bodies change and heal themselves. I've definitely worked with clients who they've just come in insulin resistant, just right on that border of type 2 diabetes, and just messed up lifestyle, and just working together for a longer period of time, being able to reduce those inflammatory markers, they've been on metformin, getting them, to with a doctor's, help, getting them to come off of that metformin and healing their bodies so that when they could truly only tolerate like around 10 or 15 grams of carbohydrates, then they've been able to tolerate, about 50 grams, feel amazing, stay in ketosis, keep their blood sugar down. I mean, it's amazing what the body's capable of and how we can heal ourselves.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. When you look at people who don't live in the United States, people who immigrate over, their gut bacteria is radically different than what ours looks like. And so within a week of migrating over and living here, they're already changed. So your body changes rapidly, and it changes in a position to where it's either going to help itself or hurt itself. And it's all based on what we do. And that's why we look at root cause. It's this, I have a boo-boo on my elbow, but where did it come from? What happened? Is it my gut? Is it my stress, my sleep? What's going on with my body that's causing this issue? And that's why paleo is so popular and keto works so well, because we're able to essentially treat the root cause without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my God. It's incredible. I love it. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any other questions for Chandler? Because I want to be conscious of his time as well. He's donating to us right now. Chan, why don't you tell us where we can find you on social media and connect with you and follow you, and for all of your amazing advice?
Yeah. If you guys have information you want more from me, or if you have private information you want to ask me, you can go to facebook.com/ChansLogic. That's my Facebook page where I do a live video every night where I just spout off something about mental health or nutrition or whatever's on my mind. That's probably the best place to follow me. You can follow my blog. It's just chanslogic.com. So it's just my name and logic because it's my logic.
No, these are really good. And I want to encourage you to follow Chandler's blog, it's Chan's Logic, ChansLogic. So follow him on Facebook, follow his blog. These are things that you probably want to share, like within your communities, within the groups that you're coaching, maybe on, your business Facebook pages, inside your Facebook pages. Thanks for providing that. I think it's just always really, really great information. And I think it's really great too, because like while our clients do look at us as, the experts and as the people that they're going to for advice, I am very, very transparent with my clients and let them know that like, I'm not God. I don't have all the answers to everything, and I'm happy to find the best possible resources of information. And I think like when you can provide such great information, like the types that Chandler provides on his blog and on his Facebook page, it really helps your client trust you even more. That you're not just blindly leading them, but that you have somebody that's in your network that is very well educated, well-spoken, has tons of experience, and has these resources available that can continue to help them.
That's right. We're stronger together than we are apart.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Chandler, thank you again so very much for spending time with us today. Coaches, thank you so much for spending your time joining us. This is recorded, so I'm going to go ahead and upload it to YouTube channel. I'll send it over to you too, just so you have it. And I'll post it into the coaches community. Yeah. All right, you guys, keep doing what you're doing, changing lives, being awesome. Chandler, love you. Thank you so much. Can't wait to have you back on my podcast and talk all about this again.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for being good listeners, and I'm glad nobody's eyes glazed over and they fell asleep. So that's always a win.
No, you did great. All right, my friends, enjoy your day. Bye.